Hey, everybody, tighten your buttholes. It's packed. I'm the Peter Coffin, the lovely Miss Astronaut Cowboy Doctor, PhD-C, right here. Together, we are PACD packed. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on your favorite podcast service, YouTube, Spotify, whatever. Also, leave us a glowing review, and I can't stress this enough. You need to leave us a glowing review on Audible or Apple Podcasts. We are a 5-star podcast.
Not 3, not 4, 5. I'm a 5-star man.
Help us keep the lights on by becoming a patron at patreon.com/pactpod. That is PACDPOD. Your monthly support gets you into the Discord server, which we're doing a bunch of new stuff. We're talking reading group. We're talking movie night. It's in development. Stay tuned for more on that. It also gets you exclusive content. You see some content before everyone else. We've got fantastic pack merch available as well. Finally, tell your friends. We rely so big on word of mouth. We stream 7 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. Thank you tons for tuning in.
Oh, damn. I just forgot what I was going to say.
That's a great thing to do right at the top of the podcast. Joining us today is Andrew from Socialism Train. Well, I'll put in the record scratch sound there.
And then, did we say your first name?
Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, and then we'll say, Andrew will be like, you're probably wondering why or how I got here.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll pause it and you have to go, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here.
I'm a mouse.
I'm a mouse who loves cheese.
And I cook.
I've never seen that movie.
Well, we've just described a lot of it.
Yeah.
Andrew, before we get going, tell us how people can follow you, can listen to Socialism Train, etc.
Socialism Train on Twitter or socialismtrain.com.
So, our main topic tonight is actually going to be Nicaragua and the elections that just occurred there. And you have some experience running for office here in the United States. I think that going into your experience a little bit is going to be really helpful for people in understanding exactly how ridiculous the Nicaraguan stuff is in the media.
Ridiculous is a great way to summarize it. If what Nicaragua was doing happened in the United States, we would have significantly better elections.
So why don't you tell us in brief a little bit about what it was like running for office, what you ran for, and what you were up against?
So in 2018, I ran for Public Utilities Commissioner in Washington State. It's basically a county level executive and legislative position in one. You're a council member and a commissioner. So you decide legislation and vote on it in a group of 3. There are 2 other commissioners. I decided to run because of the 3 commissioners. One was very much in the pocket of Puget Sound Energy. Her election campaigns had been almost completely funded by them the entire time she had been in office, which was
Girl boss.
part of the opposition to me was, how dare I run against a woman? Like, not even.
Oh, come on. That's, of course. Doesn't that just...
A woman can't be Public Utilities Commissioner. Did she come out and say that at an event in private? She heard you say that?
They implied that I was doing it because I didn't like women.
I love that. That's awesome.
That's amazing.
And that is why we have you here.
Yeah.
Women.
So I filed to run, and immediately, so just for clarification, the position itself is technically a nonpartisan position. So on the ballot, it doesn't actually, you don't have like a party primary for this position. So I ran as a socialist. I ended up getting the support of the Democrats, the Green Party, and most of the Republican Party, though the party didn't officially endorse me. And the Libertarians supported me, as well as some other smaller groups. So basically, I had all of the support. My opponent had the support of wealthy donors and Puget Sound Energy and literal lobbyists. They dumped over $100,000 into her campaign. And keep in mind, this is a job that pays about $25,000 a year. and you meet once a month.
So basically
part-time.
worthless. Essentially, like if you were to do just that, it would be more or less a poverty wage.
Yeah, you can't survive on the job. And I actually talked about how even though that's what they make, for the amount of work they do, which is about 2 hours a month, they make significantly more per hour than the average worker at the utility district. And they actually attacked me for that and said, Andrew Saturn claims that the utility district is violating minimum wage laws.
Andrew Saturn hates women, makes up things about the district and utility wages.
They 100% attacked me using the regulatory agency in Washington. They filed all these frivolous complaints about me saying I'm attacking women, I hate women. Just like I filed things wrong. They were looking at like typos on paperwork.
Gamer chat, yes.
You were like, I did file things wrong, yes.
I didn't do my filing fee because in Washington state, you can either file with the local jurisdiction or with the state. I filed with the state because I wasn't sure, like, do I file with the county or with the utility district itself? And when the record for the state wasn't in the county system, they were like, oh, we got him. This is the smoking gun. We got him.
The smoking gun.
The skeleton key.
Yeah, the skeleton key that unlocks the entire campaign.
Like trans people are for Amy Therese.
They thought it would get me kicked off the ballot. And their reason was I never paid the fee, therefore I'm not a real candidate. So they complained to the regulatory agency, which was immediately like, if you had looked in the state system, you would have seen he paid the fee on day one. So basically my campaign, it was very, I would say, like energetic. It was me and just a couple other people. Mm-hmm. We did all of our own, I did the website. We did all of our own work in terms of canvassing, and we went to events and set up events and called people and texted people. Did our own mailers, all kinds of stuff, and ended up spending less than $5,000. Mm-hmm. The opponents, who were basically where Democrats and Republicans meet, and that they're all capitalists, basically came together to try to squash my campaign. So they tried to smear me and say I abuse women and that I'm a convicted felon. And the people who did this included the county elections official. So the person who counts the votes in the election, and so supposed to be impartial, was personally going around campaigning for my opponent. In the United States of America, which is supposed to have the most free and fair elections in the world. Mm-hmm. When all I was saying was, hey, maybe we shouldn't have this company that's owned by a bank ripping us off for electricity that's mostly generated by burning diesel fuel. Crazy idea, right?
Wild.
Yeah. When I went around and campaigned, I had Republicans coming up to me like, so wait, you're a socialist? Mm-hmm. Don't you hate all of the people out here? Don't you want us all to go away? And I'm like, no, I just, I think everyone is, if you're not a billionaire oppressing working people, then you're on the side of workers, regardless of what you actually believe in, at the end of the day.
I had a similar experience last week at the Better Discourse thing. I mean, I didn't really get to speak a lot on the panel I was participating in. But after that, I sort of walked out in the front, and I was going to leave. I was going to go back to my hotel room and eat pizza and shit, because that's what I fucking do, obviously. But all these people sort of crowded around me, and they're like, "Was you a communist? You were the only one saying anything that made any sense on the stage," even though I didn't get to talk for very long. I ended up talking to these people for 3 hours. It's not hard to talk to that type of
I'm
person.
assuming the way in which you approached the panel then, and then also these people who were interested in communism, what you probably said was death to America KKK.
I'm pretty sure that is probably your slogan for your campaign too, right?
Death to America, Kaka, you're all irredeemable settlers, and by the way, you're a white male.
You had that on your yard signs, right?
But I also hated women. So
don't bounce out.
Yeah. I mean,
you gotta get everybody. I'm playing both sides, so that I always come out on top.
Yeah. That was the craziest thing. So they did all this smearing of me. My opponent spent $50,000 of the oil money putting out a mailer. And I wish I had a copy to show you, because it was it looked like I designed it. It literally had my face on it and my platforms, and then said not a Democrat.
It's like, well, thanks.
And they mailed it to all the rural areas of the county. And I ended up getting like I got more votes for a socialist candidate than anyone else since like 1920 in Washington State.
Damn.
I got like almost 60,000 votes and 42% of the vote or something like that.
I mean, that's killer. You were held back by the Democratic Party, whom you ostensibly were closer to, and I don't like using.
Well, they endorsed me. The party endorsed me.
Yeah.
The party voted to endorse me as their candidate, even though I wasn't a Democrat. It's a long story. I was physically attacked at a campaign event by the co-chair of the local DSA.
So you weren't like, it wasn't literal political violence against you. It was an actual physical attack.
Physical violence. Someone literally shoved me and knocked my table over and knocked my phone to the ground, tried to break my phone. We were trying to leave and they blocked my truck in. They wouldn't let us leave.
Nice.
And it gets so stupid. This was DSA people. This wasn't even Democrats. So like literal election meddling, like going around telling people not to vote for me, that I'm some sort of a convicted felon, that I hate women, that they said I was a secret Republican, and that because Republicans had come out publicly in support of my campaign, therefore I must be Republican, even though I'm running on a very obviously socialist platform.
Mm-hmm.
I am a member of the Socialist Party, and I'm running as a socialist. The person who counts the votes literally going around telling people not to vote for me, that I'm not a real Democrat. She was quoted on the mailer that went out about me with her face, and her title is the county election supervisor. It was cartoonish. And even with all of that, with them spending $100,000 against me and us spending $4,000 or $5,000, we still almost won the election.
Sure. But surely that can't be as bad as what's happening in the dictatorship of Nicaragua.
Authoritarian regime.
Yeah, it's not good, but like it's the best we've got, right? Like other countries, like, I don't know, Marxist-Leninist dictatorships, like you said.
You Stalinist regime.
Yeah, they have it so much worse, right?
So in Nicaragua, you're automatically registered to vote when you turn 16.
Oh.
Automatically at 16, there are polling places where you vote in person on paper, and there's a receipt you get that you voted. Elections are held on a Sunday, and it's a federal holiday. You get the day off from work. The typical time to vote in Nicaragua is like 8 minutes. They check you off. They hand you a ballot. You go to a private little area. You fold your ballot. You walk out. You hand it to a person. They shove it in a box, and you leave.
Is there an electoral college?
No.
How do they prevent the tyranny of the masses?
They don't. Here's the other crazy thing. In America, when you vote, if you vote in person and if you even vote on paper and you're not voting on a secret box that sends your vote off into who knows where, in Nicaragua, when you vote and they put it in the box, when the polls are closed, 3 people from the government elections authority count the votes in front of everybody. There's no taking them in a box and putting it in a truck and the truck drives off. You get to sit and watch at your local polling place the people count the votes. And there are people like double checking, and these are volunteers. Anyone can volunteer. Mm-hmm. So whether you're a Sandinista or you're like a far right, whatever, doesn't matter. You can come and watch and you can participate. Many of the election supervisors were Americans, Canadians, people from all over the world came to Nicaragua.
Well, like Caleb.
Caleb Maupin has videos inside a polling place watching people freely come in and vote. No one's stopping them. No one's intimidating them. So in America, they say like, well, whoever gets the most votes wins, right? And no, it's like, oh, there's that whole electoral college thing, and there's like all these stupid levels to it. And only 2 parties ever actually get onto the ballot because the state has to decide who's worthy of being an actual party and having access to the ballot.
There's only one party in Nicaragua that got on the ballot, right? Just one?
No, there were 7.
Oh, that's different than one.
11 other parties tried to run or tried to field candidates. And those are the people in the media where they're saying the pre-candidates, individuals who were barred from running because they're convicted felons who tried to overthrow the government in 2018, or who were doing money laundering, or were doing fraud, or were doing treason, cooperating with outside governments, and were caught like literally planning coups, like ridiculous fringe far right, like QAnon or like Nazis or like basically insane stuff we would not want in the United States running for office.
How many of these people were actually present on that terrible day on the 6th of January, 2021?
Never forget.
Oh, that's the thing. It's like they talk about January 6th as a coup attempt, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was one protester was shot and like 3 or 4 police officers died for various reasons.
Uh-huh.
In Nicaragua in 2018, there was months of unrest and organizing a coup from the far right and parts of the European Union, the CIA, all kinds of things. Hundreds of people were killed and thousands of people were injured. But they don't call that a coup attempt. They call it civil unrest or a attempted uprising or like
disturbance.
Very
disturbance. Yeah, they had the music up too loud.
But Nicaragua actually passed a law making it a crime to call for a repeat of 2018. When you run for president in Nicaragua, there's no primary. They have the parties just have their own process and pick a candidate and field those.
So undemocratic.
Well, it's the same way in the United States, except they have a game where they pretend you get to help choose, and then they just choose someone else anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
So in Nicaragua, they don't play around and they go, no, the party gets to choose their candidate. The members of the party can choose that candidate. They can have their own internal process, whatever they want to do. And then that candidate can then say, I'm the blah, blah, blah candidate running for president. And they appear on the ballot. Well, in Nicaragua, one of the party's vice presidential candidates gave a speech where they called for a literal let's do a repeat of 2018 and do it right this time. So, of course, what happened to her? She was charged with inciting violence. And the American media has said this is Ortega trying to prevent democracy.
Okay, so imagine that somebody here said, we need to do January 6th again, but right. Imagine how that would be treated in our media.
Or imagine
well,
if
AOC would probably have a heart attack.
Oh, I'm pretty sure she would die. I think that would be literal violence against.
What did we do on January 6th?
Nothing.
Donald Trump allegedly incited a riot, and he was impeached for it, which is like one of the highest crimes you can commit in the United States. He was impeached for they didn't have the guts to push treason, but that's basically what they implied.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So it's like it's ridiculous. The election in Nicaragua had 65.5% turnout, which is in line with prior years. If you go all the way back to 2001, that's about the turnout they had, give or take 5-10%. And that's with international organizations supervising the election, the same organizations that are now saying that percentage is a lie.
What organizations are those, and what percentages are they claiming?
So there are lots of different organizations. Whether or not you trust them or who would fund them or whatever that's opinion. For example, some would say the OAS, which is I think it's Organization for American States. Some say it's like linked with the CIA and the Department of State and the European Union. But let's just pretend they're impartial. They themselves said that the prior year turnout was accurate. So what changed? There's one organization called Urnas Abiertas, which means open ballot boxes, that literally appeared out of nowhere in May and has no information on the internet other than their own website and a Twitter account with like 1,200 followers. They're the sole source of information being cited in every news article about the election being a sham. Like every major news, Reuters, BBC, all the big ones are all citing this one no-name organization that popped up out of nowhere.
Right. Why are they legitimate in any way?
Well, they aren't legitimate, in my opinion. It's just two individuals. Both of them are right-wing activists who have ties to the European Union, to far-right, basically organizations that have already admitted they wanted to overthrow the government. They have ties to the right-wing organizations that wanted to overthrow Venezuela. It's in their own information. You can go on their website. You can look at their reports. They have 2 reports on their website. One is 100% anonymous. It doesn't cite people's names or anything. It just is 2 pages that literally says, the turnout was 18.5%, and this is based on 1,450 anonymous observers on the ground.
So more than their Twitter followers.
Yeah, because even if they got every single one of their Twitter followers, that wouldn't be enough. This report came out weeks ago. So they're basically saying we got 1,450 time travelers to watch the election and then go back in time for us to write this report and say it was only 18.5%. It's insane. You couldn't have guessed the turnout weeks before the election happened. It's not possible.
No, and you couldn't have guessed it to be so utterly unlike previous elections.
Yeah, if they had said 50% or 60%, that would be maybe believable. But to go all the way down from 65 and 75% to 18%,
It's absurd.
Very of a claim, especially when you have no data and no methodology in your report and you're anonymous. There's no names behind it. What's crazy is there is another report on their website from even earlier that isn't anonymous, and it cites the same stuff, exact, almost word for word, same report. They cite organizations on it. Wilson Center is one of them. It's a DC-based think tank that's funded by the U.S. government.
Well, they're DC academics, right?
These two people are basically activist academic types. There's not even any proof they even live in Nicaragua, by the way. No photos, no videos of going to the polls and looking at no interviews of voters, nothing. Another organization on this report is IDEA, which is an international organization, but it's sponsored 100% by Western countries. So Canada, United States, European Union.
Valid, right? Good stuff. Like the U.S. is like, yeah,
freedom lovers.
Yeah, freedom lovers.
Yeah, another one is a very conservative university that's associated with a church. On the gray zone, Ben Norton, the independent journalist, wrote a huge article about this, partially based on a lot of what I found. But yeah, basically this organization has no legitimacy outside of what could be described as like CIA cutouts, imperialist cutout of the European Union. No left-leaning countries in South America support any of what this report says, with like very few exceptions. And my opinion on that is they want to basically stay out of it and are saying like, no comment, don't invade us, don't overthrow our government. So this organization, Ernest Abiertas, is two people who are just basically academic activists who used to work for all these other organizations. They're known to have ties to groups that tried to overthrow the government in 2018 and tried to overthrow Venezuela. The priest that is in charge of the college that sponsored their report is also a guy who you could look him up. He said he wanted to overthrow the government, and he's very much 100% all about going back to the good old days before Ortega, before the Sandinistas were in power, which is like a military dictatorship, basically, is what
I like Cuba, where, you have a lot of people saying things like, oh, the communists took over Cuba.
Who aren't in Cuba.
Yeah. Folks that are not in Cuba, by the way.
They took our plantations away as their big complaint.
They took Cuba from us. They did it, and we had to row over here on rafts, which they didn't. People
who left Cuba fled when Batista lost power were literally flown here on CIA jets.
Shocking.
They did not get in a rowboat. They were flown on jets.
Really? Batista, the guy with tons of U.S. state, capital, and mafia ties here?
Money. They flew a lot of people directly to New York City and set them up in like fancy apartments and hotels.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so Fonseca and Valle and the people that support them, or are citing them at least, one of the major things that they did was discredit the election in terms of voter turnout. I know we talked about some other things that they did to kind of undermine the results.
Yeah, so their website is very funny, ernestebiertas.com, which, by the way, it's hosted in Lithuania and was registered in registrar.eu. It was set up in Europe, basically. This isn't a Nicaraguan group. This is a European group doing all this. Their website has a section called Acts of Political Violence, and it's a map of all the political violence, not actual physical violence, but political violence.
AOC political violence.
Yes, they have about 1,500 citations it's a map with points on it, and you can click on each point and read what the report of the violence, the political violence is. Most of them are literally, some Sandinista came to my house and asked if I needed a ride to the polls.
So I mean, I guess the people in your own electoral campaign, they were right, and that you were politically violent, and that you did some similar things in
I mean, I guess
U.S.
if the
elections.
violence is you don't want them to win the election, then yeah, you're a crazy violent person, politically speaking.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you did any kind of canvassing or anything like that,
Campaigning, or you ran a campaign, how
Yeah.
dare you run against them?
This isn't the first time I've said this, but I want to know why Hillary Clinton didn't get arrested for saying Pokemon go to the polls.
Very blatant act of political violence. And sending Democrats to knock on doors and give senior citizens rides, that's voter intimidation.
It's terrible.
It's ridiculous. It's the dumbest thing I've ever read. The Sandinistas are extremely popular in Nicaragua. They routinely get 75% of the vote or more. The opposition to them is literally either center right or far right or extreme right. To say that Nicaragua does not have free and fair elections, even though 6 other parties were included in the election, their voter turnout was higher than ours. It's much easier to vote in Nicaragua than it is to vote in the United States. You can vote at 16 in Nicaragua versus 18 in the United States. It's a federal holiday on a Sunday in Nicaragua. It's not a federal holiday, and it's on a Tuesday in the United States. You have to stand in line and vote on a machine that's owned by a private corporation that has secret software to count the votes, and no one knows how they tabulate the votes. They've been caught cheating and breaking the way the vote count works. There's insane stuff you could look up. I don't want to get too much into this because it starts to sound a little wacky because it's so insane. In Nicaragua, they literally vote on paper. They circle in who they want to vote for and put that paper in a box, and they can go and watch their ballots be counted because it's done in front of everyone. They made it up. Like there's no data backing this 18.5% turnout. There's no data backing the voter intimidation or anything. It's literally that they want pretext for a coup. And what did Biden do, by the way? The night of the election, he announced sanctions on Nicaragua.
Yeah.
It's the same playbook they've been doing for the past 60 years, basically, in South America.
Another thing that I wanted to circle back to, just about the legitimacy of this organization and them claiming to be advocating for Nicaraguan people.
Oh no, they're not. They're very blatantly not advocating for free and fair elections. In their talk, which is on their website, if you go to their website, you might have to do Google Translate, but their blog section has a video, and you can watch the video. It's 2 hours long, but it is subtitled in English on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And if you have like a newer smartphone, you could do like Google Lens or something and translate slides into English. But they very blatantly say their goal is to stop the election from happening, is what they say.
Yeah, but they say that in Spanish, so like it's not like valid.
I was going to ask you about something very specific, though. What I meant is, I'm trying to get to the accent thing.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so much in the video that's very. I mean, anyone who speaks Spanish is aware, or even people who don't speak Spanish, there are like 2 predominant Spanish accents in the world. There's the European, like kind of lispy, floaty accent, and there's the less front of the mouth, more back of the mouth way of speaking Spanish. In their video presentation, most of the people speaking Spanish in that video speak it with a European accent. These are Europeans claiming to be Nicaraguans. And one of the guys is literally, he outs himself and his identity. You can see his face. He is Dr. Daniel Zavado. He is not Nicaraguan. He is a European.
Right.
He works in Washington, D.C. at a think tank that's funded by the U.S. government. So these people are not like activists who just want everyone to have democracy and vote. They're quite blatantly far-right extremist activists who wanted to shut down the election, much like the like kind of Q conspiracy people who think like JFK is going to come back from the dead and like Trump's going to magically ascend to the throne. And
he's not going to do that.
They're 100% delusional. The difference is these people actually have the resources to overthrow the government because they are backed by the U.S. government and other Western powers.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I wanted to touch on, I tried actually. So part of what's being cited in a lot of news articles is Wikipedia in the 2021 Nicaraguan general election entry on Wikipedia, which is full of far right State Department talking points. I went up there and I literally tried to take the citations that were already there. For example, they cite that 11 people were arrested by the president and thrown in jail to help the president win. And that's what's written on Wikipedia right now. And I was like, that's not why they were arrested. They were arrested for inciting violence, committing fraud, laundering money. One of them was laundering money through an alleged nonprofit into their political organization, which is against the law. You can't do that in Nicaragua. You can't do it in the United States.
Well, you can't do that in the United States.
Yeah.
You can't go out in the United States if you're an average person who doesn't have connections and raise money for a nonprofit to help kittens and then put that money into your election campaign. That would be a huge violation of the law. That's exactly what happened to a lot of these candidates in Nicaragua. They were running fake nonprofits to funnel money from outside the country into their election campaign.
So you're telling me that President Ortega did not personally put on a cowboy hat, some spurs, mount a horse, and lasso each one of these 11 people
I will
and drag
honestly,
them back to the Capitol?
It makes me like him less that doesn't.
It's a shame that's not what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to happen.
So I tried to edit the Wikipedia article to take their own citations where they claim Ortega arrested people, to say the government issued warrants for arrest based on court rulings that said these people violated laws, and exactly what laws they violated. And it turned into an edit war of these weirdos on Wikipedia erasing everything I wrote and putting back what they wrote. So I would say, hey, the way you resolve a conflict on Wikipedia, rather than just edit each other's stuff back and forth forever until the end of time, is you go onto the talk page for the article and you have a discussion, and you and anyone else who wants to be part of that discussion come to a consensus. And the rule for Wikipedia is basically, if you're making a good faith, citable, like reputable, verifiable claim, then that is what goes on Wikipedia. It's an encyclopedia, not a soapbox.
Yeah.
So I was saying, like, look, this is in your article that you are using to cite these people were arrested. It says they're arrested for fraud. And they would say, no, they were not arrested for fraud. Where does it say that in the article? And I'm like, it's in the article. Did you read the article? They went from arguing with me and losing their argument to reporting me to the admins of Wikipedia for harassment.
You were harassing them
harassing them by asking them to follow the Wikipedia process where you discuss the changes and come to a consensus rather than just let them do what they want. So I would reply back to the reports, well, look at the talk page. They're not participating in the process. Admins agreed with me initially and said, yeah, why are you reporting him for harassment? He's not harassing you. He's asking you to follow the rules. Just follow the rules. This went on and on and on. And eventually I gave up because I was like, fuck it. They're just going to put whatever they want on here. There are more of them than there are of me. I don't have time for this. One user doxed me on Wikipedia, basically revealing my real identity and my age and where I live and what I do. And then was like, and I'm a little baby. I'm a child. He's a big grown man. I'm very scared. He claimed to be a 5-year-old. This one user who's editing entries on abortion and like 80s political events.
A 5-year-old, as in 5.
I'm a baby.
He claims to be, right? So he kept challenging me and replying to me. And in his reply would say, leave me alone. He found one moderator on Wikipedia who saw all the leave me alones and decided that that was a basis for banning me from Wikipedia permanently for harassment.
Even though he's the one soliciting answers from you.
That was the thing. I had given up on editing his article. His article. It's not his article. But you know what I'm saying. I'd actually tried to edit an article for Urbes Abiertas to say, like, that's the other crazy thing. I tried to add an article for them, citing them as the source, their own website, their own reports, their own video. And he was, you're not citing anything. These aren't reputable sources. You can't say they're reputable for one article and not for their own article. And that went back and it's insane.
That's insane.
I'm not even upset about it because I never really used Wikipedia. But like, no wonder people like Vosh and the other guy, Destiny, just constantly quote Wikipedia. It's basically like the CIA encyclopedia. You know, I got this information from this organization. You can go look for yourself.
Well, they did the same thing with Landback too. They're not talking about that.
Ernest Abiertas. We're talking about.
It's not that one. It's ours. It's the different one.
Ernest Abiertas.
The other one that's not funded by the CIA.
Yeah, this isn't based on my opinion. This is go to their website and look at their reports and read their reports and tell me where there's data that backs up 18.5% voter turnout. Their methodology is 1,400 people told us. That's it. Yeah. And they published this before the election took place. it's an estimate at best, and it's a shitty estimate.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe that they've been faking their elections for 2 decades.
Which have also yielded different results several decades. Like, it's the same elections that Sandinistas lost multiple times decades ago.
And they allow, here's the thing. What other country in the world that allegedly has fake elections allows 6 other parties to run?
Yeah.
If they were such a dictatorship, there would be no opposition party. There'd be one fake one or something. Like in the United States, one's called the Democrats, one's called the Republicans.
Yeah.
And they just like trade off every other year.
Yeah.
All these other parties, including the party I'm in, doesn't even get 1% of the vote. We don't qualify to get onto the ballot. You have to win elections in the United States to get on the ballot. How are you going to get on the ballot if you can't be on the ballot? How are you going to win an election? You basically have to do a write-in campaign, which is unheard of. So, I mean, I don't know. Basically, I got 42% of the vote with $100,000 of corporate cash, shadowy PAC money basically spent against me.
Mm-hmm.
Countless mailers, collusion from government officials, collusion from oversight agencies that were supposed to be neutral and were not. I was denied access to debates. I was denied access to local media. The newspaper would not interview me, but they loved to run 2 negative articles about me based on the things that the elected officials said about me that weren't true. I was physically attacked at campaign events, basically smeared all over town, even though I had the support of every party in the county except for the Republican Party officially, even though Republican Party members supported me overwhelmingly. They did not support the person who was supposed to be their own candidate. We spent very little money, $5,000, ran openly as a socialist, and again, still got 42% of the vote. A record, by the way, in the state. And I was never mentioned for breaking a state record. No one ran a story about the guy who ran as a socialist and almost won in a county that's basically owned by a corporation, compared to Nicaragua, where not only did they let the opposition parties run, these are far right opposition parties. It's not like they have the Sandinistas and the Democrats. They have like the Sandinistas and like crazy MAGA guys who are like religious fanatics. And they allow them to be on the ballot and they still won. What more could they have done? So to say their election was rigged and their election is a sham, there are no words. Like, if their election is a sham, what is the United States election, where all the shit I faced is supposed to be like the shining beacon of democracy of the world?
Exactly.
Right, with 50% voter turnout max.
And that's counting people who are we don't even talk about like, in some states like Florida, for example, if you've ever been convicted of a crime in Florida, you're never allowed to vote again.
Yep.
That's insane. Why would you stop someone from voting? Even after they've done their time, they're out of prison. They're a free person. They can go do whatever they want now, but they can't ever vote again in Florida.
And there's horse shit like that at every stage, whether you're a voter or a candidate.
We didn't even cover, there's so much interference from the U.S. government and social media that happened prior to the election. They banned users who were supporting the Sandinista party.
Wow.
There were sanctions that were in motion before the election even took place. How do they know the election is going to be a sham enough to start writing legislation?
Well, that's a good question. They had, again, those 1,400 or so people travel forward in time, observe the election, and come back and tell us that it was a sham.
We're supposed to assume that the U.S. Department of State and the CIA have time travel technology, I think is what this election means.
And if that is the case, why are they not sharing this time travel technology with us? Do they think that everybody is going to go on, like there's going to be some mad dash to go kill Hitler as a baby or some shit?
I don't know.
I'm going to be the one that kills Hitler. No, it's going to be me. And once everybody has time travel, it's really down to nanoseconds, man. Who gets there first?
It's like I said, I'm not an Ortega fan. I don't know anything about like the Sandinista policies when it comes to like day-to-day stuff in the country. I'm not like campaigning for Ortega. I think it's weird his wife's the vice president. That's strange. But the fact is, there's nobody out there with a verifiable report with like data, like hard data. Like say they'd even released a report that said they did exit polling. That would at least be believable if you released it the day after the election and said based on exit polling. But they didn't even do that. They just said based on our opinion weeks before the election, it's 18.5% turnout. That makes sense. How would you come up with that number? If you look at the population data that's on actually Wikipedia, you could look at the population of Nicaragua and you could look at like segments of population based on age. And if you add up the people 16 and above, and you do the math and you say how many people are reported as having voted, how many ballots were counted, it comes out to like 62%, which is very close to the like 65% that was reported by the government. There's no piece of evidence out there that shows it could have been a low voter turnout in a fraud election.
I feel like what we can really arrive at here, though, is that Marxist-Leninists can win in Nicaragua, but they can't win in the United States. Weird.
I almost did win, even considering all of the election meddling. I think they can win if we had elections that were as open and fair and free as Nicaraguan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that we don't. I want to make sure people understand they can go and listen to Socialism Train, Andrew's podcast, at socialismtrain.com, and where all podcasts are seen, like Spotify, etc. Well, I think with that, we'll probably end the stream. Thanks again, Andrew. We will see you next time. That's all for today. Thanks again for watching or listening. This is Packed. I'm Peter. This is Miss Astronaut Cowboy Doctor. To help us out, click like, follow, subscribe, whatever. Leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Audible. To support us, become a patron at patreon.com/packpod. That's PACDPOD. Thanks so much, everybody. We will see you next time.